On the morning of July 19, 2004, 28-year-old Mark Hacking woke up in his house where he lived with his wife. He assumed that she had already gone for her daily morning jog. She had planned to start at about 5 a.m. and usually worked out in a forest area in Salt Lake City, Utah. After that, she needed to go to work at Wells Fargo, where she held the position of assistant stockbroker. Her name was Lori, and they had agreed that Mark would drive her to work at 7 a.m. When Mark woke up and didn't see his wife at home, he thought she was still jogging. He fell asleep again and woke up at 8 a.m., but Lori still hadn't returned. He assumed she had already left in her car, probably not wanting to wake him up. Mark looked out the window and saw that her car wasn't in the parking spot, confirming his assumption. Without thinking much about it, Mark continued his day. He took a shower, had breakfast, and by 10 a.m., Lori still hadn't contacted him. Concerned, Mark decided to call her workplace to check in on her. While picking up the phone, he noticed that Lori's work uniform, which she had prepared the night before, was still at home. This was unusual since the dress code didn't allow her to show up without it. Alarmed, Mark dialed the office number and spoke with a colleague, confirming that Lori hadn't arrived for work. Mark then realized she hadn't returned from her jog. Mark immediately contacted 911, but the dispatcher told him they couldn't file a missing person report yet, as Lori was an adult and they had to wait 24 hours. Mark, not willing to wait, drove to the forest where Lori usually jogged. He found her car still parked at the spot, but there were no signs of a struggle or any indication that she had been there. Mark contacted friends, family, and colleagues, and they all joined him at the site. They too contacted the police, emphasizing that Lori was a responsible person who would never miss work without notifying anyone. She would always contact Mark if anything went wrong. Mark knew the route Lori usually ran, so he and a few friends searched along it, but they found no trace of her. After several hours, the police arrived. They were told that Lori had been jogging, but no trace of her was found on the usual route. The police interviewed Mark, who was extremely worried and struggled to stay composed. Despite his distress, detectives were able to ask him some questions. They noticed his shoes were wet, and Mark explained that he had walked along the path where Lori usually ran, which passed through a stream, explaining the wet shoes. The officers didn't find this suspicious. They began an official search using a K-9 squad and helicopters, but within hours they found no signs of Lori. The detectives became wary, recalling a similar case the previous year where Elizabeth Smart was abducted in the same area. Fortunately, she had survived, and her captors had been arrested. Despite the similarity, no evidence pointed to an abduction in Lori's case, so the investigation shifted. Mark and Lori had been married after dating for 5 years. They had big plans, and Mark had recently graduated with a master's degree in psychology from the University of Utah. They had planned to move to North Carolina, where Mark had been accepted to medical school. Lori had postponed her own career plans to support Mark's. They had even packed for the move and celebrated it with friends just 3 days before Lori's disappearance. Most concerning was the fact that Lori was in the 5th week of pregnancy, making it unlikely that she would have run away. Moreover, all of her valuables and money were left at home, and she couldn't have left without her car. The police recognized this, so they dismissed the theory that Lori had run away and continued the search. By noon, missing person flyers were distributed in the city with a photo and description of Lori. Her parents also made public appeals. Investigators spoke with neighbors and learned that one had seen Lori's car at 7 a.m. The same neighbor had spotted it again at 8:30 a.m., which contradicted Mark's claim that the car hadn't been there when he woke up. Mark couldn't explain this discrepancy. His story seemed inconsistent with the neighbor's testimony, and this made the detectives suspicious. As is often the case, the main suspect was the husband, especially when his behavior seemed unusual. Despite Mark's claims that they had an excellent relationship and that they were happy, the detectives continued to question him. Further investigation revealed that between 8 o'clock and 10 a.m., Mark had gone to a store and bought a new mattress, claiming it was necessary for the move. However, he was unable to show the officers the old mattress, claiming he had already disposed of it. This, too, raised suspicions, as Mark had never mentioned the store during his earlier testimony. Eventually, Mark was taken to the police station for questioning. On the way there, he made a strange comment, saying that if they found Lori, she would be very angry with him, but he didn't elaborate. At the station, Mark provided a more detailed account, claiming he assumed Lori had gone to work when he woke up. He later remembered he needed a new mattress for the move, and after getting ready he went to the store. He visited several locations before finding the perfect mattress. Mark was tidying up the bedding on the bed when he decided to call Lori's workplace. After making the call, he realized something was wrong and began searching for her. Eventually, he found her car. The police were already aware of the car's make and model, and they suggested that Mark take a stress test called a CVS, computerized voice stress analysis. This technology, a development of the polygraph, analyzes stress levels in a person's voice. It was relatively new and easier to analyze than older methods, though it couldn't guarantee 100% accuracy. At first, Mark agreed to participate, and the detectives explained how the test would clarify some of the facts from his previous statements. They were particularly concerned about the mattress, which had seemed suspicious to the investigators. However, Mark quickly realized that the test could work against him, so he refused. His refusal raised even more suspicions, prompting the police to look more closely at the last days of his life. The investigation began with a search of the couple's house, and the police paid special attention to the mattress and bedroom, suspecting it might be a crime scene. The investigators also checked several nearby garbage cans. Mark's brother appeared at the scene asking why the police were there. Mark explained that law enforcement officers were verifying his statements from the interrogation. However, no significant evidence was found, and for a while, it seemed like Lori might have simply disappeared without any foul play. But then, Mark's behavior took another turn. On July 20th, he checked into a hotel about a kilometer from his home. At 2 a.m., he ran out of his hotel room barefoot and in only his shoes, startling the other guests and the hotel staff. They called the police. Mark's brother, Scott, arrived at the hotel and found a strange message on Mark's pocket computer. It said, "I'm very sorry." This behavior was so erratic that the family decided to place Mark in a psychiatric hospital, fearing that something had happened to him. Detectives also grew increasingly suspicious, even involving FBI agents. One investigator suggested Mark's behavior seemed more like a staged reenactment than a genuine mental health crisis. The police began to suspect that Mark was trying to divert their attention and build a defense. As the investigation progressed, they uncovered a series of lies Mark had been telling for years. Mark's family and friends had always known him as a bright, kind young man, studying for a future in medicine. However, it turned out he had never applied to medical school or even completed his studies at the University of Utah, where he had dropped out in 2002. Instead, he spent his time at a nearby shop, smoking, drinking soda, and eating hot dogs, while everyone believed he was studying. He also lied about his job, claiming to work as a researcher at the University of Utah's neuropsychiatric department, when in fact he was just a physician's assistant. The family and investigators were shocked to learn the extent of Mark's deception. He had created an entirely false persona, hiding the truth from his wife and everyone around him. His family members were more successful in their careers. His father and one brother were doctors, and another brother was an engineer. Mark, feeling inadequate, invented a life for himself, but the lies eventually caught up with him. Despite all the deception, Mark continued to deny involvement in Lori's disappearance, and his family still believed in him, convinced that he genuinely loved his wife and unborn child. The police continued their search, and through bank transactions and surveillance footage, they began to piece together the events leading up to Lori's disappearance. The couple was seen together in a store the night before, but a review of the footage revealed that Mark had returned to the store alone at night to buy cigarettes. This further raised suspicions. The detectives focused their investigation on the mattress, which they believed held crucial evidence. They searched nearby garbage bins and eventually found a mattress near a church the couple attended. The mattress had been torn apart and there were blood stains on it. Mark claimed that Lori had been experiencing a heavy menstrual cycle and that the mattress was covered in blood. However, this explanation seemed unlikely as Lori was pregnant. The investigators became increasingly convinced that Mark was lying and that something violent had occurred in the house. The investigation into Lori's car also provided more evidence. It was clear that Lori hadn't been the last person to drive it. The car's seat adjustments and mirrors indicated that the person who had driven it was much larger than Lori. Blood was found in the back seat, along with traces that suggested the presence of a much larger person, likely Mark. When the police searched the couple's home again, they found Lori's purse, which she would never have left behind if she had left willingly. They also discovered small blood stains in the bedroom, including splashes on the headboard and a nightstand. Inside the nightstand, they found a knife. Mark explained that he kept the knife for self-defense, but the investigation revealed that the knife had Lori's blood on it. Mark's story was unraveling, but the police still lacked the body to definitively prove a crime had occurred. On July 24th, Mark confessed to his family that he and Lori had argued in the days leading up to her disappearance. He admitted that she had discovered his lies, and this had led to a rift between them. Lori had confronted him about his deception, and Mark had become afraid she would leave him. She had even contacted a university, which revealed that Mark had never applied as he had claimed. Lori had also confided in friends about her doubts, and a neighbor reported hearing a loud scream from the Hakeem household around midnight on the 18th. When asked about this, Mark finally admitted that he had shot Lori in the head after a quarrel. He then disposed of her body, the murder weapon, and the bloody mattress by throwing them away in different garbage bins around the city. Mark was arrested on August 2, 2004, and charged with aggravated murder. However, even after his confession, there was still no body to prove the crime. The search continued, and by October 1st, nearly 3 months later, Lori's decomposed body was found in a landfill in Salt Lake City. Although the body was in poor condition, a bullet wound was found, confirming Mark's confession. While awaiting trial, Mark underwent a psychiatric evaluation. Experts suggested he might suffer from narcissistic personality disorder, a condition characterized by a need for admiration and a tendency to deceive others to maintain a false image of self-importance. Mark's behavior and lies seemed to fit this profile, as he had gone to great lengths to create a life based on deceit. The police also found a note that Lori had written before her disappearance. It was unclear when she had written it, but it expressed her desire to grow old with Mark, despite the lies and deception. It seemed that Lori had finally discovered the truth about her husband, and this had led to her decision to leave him. Mark's trial proceeded, and he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 6 years. However, public outcry and the victim's family led to a revision of his parole terms, and he would not be eligible for parole until 2035. Mark continues to claim his innocence, even writing a book about his life while in prison, which he plans to publish. Thank you for watching.